Welcome to you all. I hope you all had a very meaningful, rich, and inspiring holiday season. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. As I've discussed over the years, these are the three pillars which really make up the basis and the most powerful element of a true healthy life. Rosh Hashanah being a sense of renewal, Yom Kippur a sense of sanctity, and Sukkot a experience of joy. So imagine constantly experiencing renewal, sanctity, holiness, and joy in your life. So being that we're in the month of Tishrei, Tishrei is the first of the Hebrew months, which begins with Rosh Hashanah. Tishrei is also the letters Reshis, which is like the head, like Rosh Hashanah, the head. And like a head, it's not just the beginning of the year, it's also the central nervous system. So as we experience renewal Rosh Hashanah and sanctity on Yom Kippur, and joy, and exuberant joy through Sukkot, each day elevating in joy till the climax and the apex, and the ultimate joy of Simchas Torah, the joy of invincibility. Those three forces now become, from the head, extends from the central nervous system to the rest of the body of the time of year, the body of the year, and may everyone have, therefore, a renewed, sacred, and joyous year in every possible sense, materially and spiritually. And as such, now that we have concluded this holiday season, in a deeply psychological way that the entire time structure and calendar, the Jewish calendar, is set up, as captured somewhat in my book 60 Days, we now come to the conclusion which leads us into Shabbos Bereshis, which is the first chapter of the entire Torah, Genesis, which we began reading on Simchas Torah. As we concluded the Torah, we began, which is also a whole lesson of its own, that there's no such thing as just stopping. You conclude, you right away climb to the next step, the beginning of Genesis anew, and then we begin the entire cycle of the year. So Bereshis, coming this Shabbat, has many, many lessons for our period in time and in general for our lives, for all of us. And hence the title of the class, If You Were Adam or Eve, which of course is the story of Genesis, taking responsibility for the world. I also want to dedicate the class in memory of Hatomim Menachem Mendel Kotler, Menachem Mendel ben Daniel Sheyichya, upon his first yahrzeit, the 13th of Tishrei, right before Sukkot, sponsored with love by the Houston community. So, one of the big challenges of life is the existential question of, do we matter and do we have any significance? Now, this has always been a question, but especially in our day and age, in our modern times, where we live in the global village of 7 billion people, and technology and so many advancements have continued to accelerate the depersonalization of life, and therefore the devaluing of an individual, one can wonder, 7 billion people, how much do I matter? Any act or any form of behavior that we follow, what difference does it make? Like a drop in a vast, infinite ocean. So this is a question which affects everything, because it comes down to how committed and invested will we be in our choices and our challenges, as a result of the fact that we don't think that we're necessarily very significant. So I want to address that topic and address and show that right when we have that biggest question, right at the beginning of the year, we immediately read the chapter of Bereshis, which is, in addition to the story of creation, ultimately the creation of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve, placed on earth to serve and to protect. The question, of course, is, why is that relevant to us? It happened thousands of years ago. Different people, a different time in the world. We're living many, many years later. But as we shall see, it's actually the story of our own lives, as everything in the Torah is. It's a blueprint for life. So the Adam and Eve story is the story of our own creation, which of course was on Rosh Hashanah, was the creation of the collective birthday of the human race, as I discussed pre-Rosh Hashanah, and the collective birth, and therefore the birthday of each individual human being. But as we shall soon discuss, the significance of Adam and Eve is a tremendous lesson in life. I want to also take an opportunity to mention, since sadly we're hearing news from Israel of I'll just like the wave of terror. And I don't want to neglect mentioning that, though it's not the topic, but it's something on our minds and our hearts. I want to dedicate the class as well to that. And I believe that some of the ideas that we'll be discussing is also what can we do about that situation, especially if we're not in Israel. What can we do here in the United States or wherever we may be in the world? Frankly, also for Israelis, what can we do besides, obviously, what the government and the army and police have to do is protect innocent citizens. But what can we all do? And there's something we all can do, because there's no such thing as we sit on the sideline and hoping someone else will do something for us. That's not the Jewish way. So what is the story of Adam and Eve? As I said, the big question of how significant. So I want to phrase it, let's put it this way. Imagine for a moment that you were the only person that living on this earth. And I don't mean that in a negative way because of an apocalypse. Whatever, an imaginary scenario. You're the only person on earth. And you're told that the destiny of existence, the destiny of the world, of the universe, is dependent on you. What type of responsibility would you feel, and how would you act? The exact opposite of what I said. When you know there's 7 other billion people, you can say, you know what, if I don't do anything, someone else will. But here's the situation, you're alone on earth. Now, of course, you can choose to ignore that and say, make believe that's not your problem. But any intelligent person says, if it's up to me and there's no one else that's going to do it, it's a different type of sense of urgency. This is the story of the creation of Adam and Eve, in simple language. And the Mishnah says it very simply. It says, why was human being created yechidi? Lefichach nivra adam yechidi. Why was the human being created as an individual, not as a part of a group, a collective? We know human beings are a community. There are thousands, hundreds, a family, 10, 5, 2. All creatures on earth, including vegetation and including mineral, were created as a species, meaning many of them. Not one tree, many trees. Not one stone, many stones. Not one fish, many fish. Not one animal, many animals. So why was the human being not created in a collective? The Mishnah continues, because a person is responsible to say, for me the world was created. A person is responsible and obligated to say that the world was created for me. Not in an arrogant way, in a responsible way. That doesn't matter how many other people are on earth. All that matters is your space where you are right now, your moment in time. Are you living up to your calling? And it makes no difference what else is going on in this world. Now, we all know that besides the fact that we may not feel significant or matter and responsible, is another factor. We are influenced by society around us, by peer pressure, by demands, by expectations. We are seduced, we are inundated, we're overwhelmed, we're brainwashed, we're programmed by all the marketing and all the messages streaming toward us, demanding something of us. When you're all alone on a planet, all those forces are not there. How would you act then? That's what we are compelled to ask ourselves, and that's what the Mishnah is saying. That we are all a single Adam and a single Eve on an earth. Regardless of what else is going on around us, what are you doing in fulfilling and living up to your calling that you were charged with? That's the question that's asked to each of us as we enter the new year following the holiday season. And it's a tremendous response to the existential dilemma that I mentioned. Are we significant? Because this is not a numbers game. This is not a commercial thing. This is quality. If your soul came down to this earth and was sent to this earth for a purpose, it makes no difference how many other souls are existent. Each one has to see themselves as completely individual. Now, if you think about it from the dignity point of view, do any of us want to feel that we're an extension of somebody else? Do anyone want us to feel that we're a follower, that we're a conformist, that we're just going to the beat of a whole group of people? Everyone knows that they want to feel like they're an individual. Whether we are or we are not, it doesn't sound or feel good when someone tells you, or you tell yourself, I am just a copy, I'm just copying others. Everybody wants to be a pioneer in some way. And the answer is you absolutely are, by virtue of your soul. If you follow your comfort zone, and you want to take an easy life by just following another person's path, fine. But that's not what your soul demands of you. That is basically succumbing and surrendering to a life of actually compromising, betraying your own true destiny. And that's the story of Adam and Eve. One human being placed in the Garden of Eden, one male, one female. They were initially male and female together, one male and female. And now let us see what you will do with a world that you were charged with, that you were given responsibility over. And if you think about it, every parent has that sense. Doesn't matter how many children are born, when parents give birth to a child, the question is, how will you treat this child? You'll say, well, so there's so many other parents dealing with their children, who cares how I deal with my child? That's ridiculous. That's sad. No, your child is your child, and every parent, a healthy parent knows it's not a numbers game. Even if you have many children. My grandmother was once asked by a journalist, she had 9 children, my mother being the oldest, how can you spread your love into 9 parts? You know, if you were children, you'd be able to love them more intensely. And my grandmother wisely responded. First she asked, are you a mother? Were you ever a mother? Obviously she wasn't. She would never ask that question. And my grandmother kindly said, it's like, think of it like the sun. The same sun reflects in every drop of water, no matter how many drops there are. The complete sun. It's not a quantitative thing that you spread the love. Yes, you only have that much time, but qualitative. The energy that you invest, each child is loved. And that's why, God forbid, any child is hurt. You don't say, oh, I have another 10 children, I have another 9 children, another 8 children. A child is a qualitative extension of ourselves. Just like a person doesn't say, oh, well, no big thing, I have 10 fingers, 1 finger is missing. Yeah, because everything is necessary. And that is the way we look at the dignity of life and what love is really all about and what real quality is all about. That you are an individual and you have that dignity to be an individual, and you are placed on this earth exactly like Adam and Eve, as if no one else exists. Now that doesn't mean that you ignore other people. That doesn't mean that you're arrogant. It means that in responsibility, you don't look around, what are others going to say or what are others going to do? What are you going to do? And then the story continues. Adam and Eve went and ate from the tree of knowledge. As they ate from the tree of knowledge, they lost their innocence. And something really drastic changed. That was what? Their self-consciousness. They no longer were able to feel completely seamlessly committed to that mission of theirs. Oh, now you have your own agenda. God told you, don't eat from this tree. Eat from the other tree of life, or partake from the other parts of the world. The only tree you shouldn't touch or eat is from the tree of knowledge. And once they transgress that, you have your own agenda. So it's no longer completely committed. That's when we begin the existential loneliness of starting to figure out, what do we do with our lives? And even Adam and Eve could no longer remain in the Garden of Eden, just alone. And their job had to be split, and to others, their children, and their children had children. There was no longer that attitude. And yet, we still read about the individuality and the singularity of Adam and Eve in the garden, because we want to regain that type of responsibility. Even though we may lose it because we become subjects, or we become conformists, or we become affected by the projections of others, whether it's our parents, educators, our systems, establishments, we always want to reconnect and regain that connection to the moment that we were in the Garden of Eden, in that pure moment. So with that said, we have both ends of the story. Number one is that we remain individuals, and we always are individuals, and at the same time, it's very easy for us to slide and slip and eat from that tree of knowledge, where we begin to not focus on our calling, but focus on how we can manipulate others, how we can gain from others, how we become duplicitous. So this Garden of Eden scenario is the optimal standard, the optimal scenario of a human being on earth feeling fully and completely responsible for the destiny of his or her life and the destiny of the universe. The tree of knowledge and post-tree of knowledge is a second state. So we have the 2 states, psychological states. One, that pure state, think of it like when the person is still a child and only is singularly focused on exploring the world, figuring it out. And then when we lose our innocence and we start becoming manipulative, we start maneuvering, we start putting up our defenses. Obviously because we may have been hurt, and we are able to hurt others, and all that comes with that. With the goal of going back to that simple place where you have one single mission. everything flows from that mission. So the birth of Adam and Eve teaches us that we all can access that, and yet also know what happens on the other side of the fence, or on the other side of the curtain, when we don't live up to that. And that's why when Adam and Eve, after they ate from the tree of knowledge and they covered themselves, God comes into the garden, it says, and says, "Where are you?" Adam was hiding. Of course, the obvious question, what do you mean, where are you? God didn't know where Adam was. And the Alter Rebbe, in his famous response to the minister that came to question him in prison, said, "Where are you?" God is asking this to every human being in all of history. I don't recognize you. Are you living up to your calling? You're so many years have you lived. Are you living up to your individual calling, your unique contribution and indispensable mission? So even after the eating from the tree of knowledge, and even after the loss of innocence, still God expects, don't wander away, don't betray yourself. So this is what we are behooved to ask ourselves as we enter into the new year. Are you betraying your own destiny? Are you betraying your own calling? And I don't mean to say that in a negative way. It means, are you living up to your own calling? Are you doing what's necessary to express the unique strengths, the unique faculties, the tools, the resources you were blessed with? As I've discussed a number of times in the search of one's personal mission statement, POP, your unique personality, your opportunities, your unique places and people that you know. Acronym POP, P-O-P-P. Personality, opportunities, people, and places. Are you using your divine providence, the choreography that was uniquely written for you, to the fullest? That is the bottom line question. Of course, most of us are busy and distracted with, number one, our jobs, our relationships, with many things that are not necessarily driven by this calling. But there's a time of the year, once a year, when we're asked to rise to the occasion and look at ourselves after experiencing the renewal of Rosh Hashanah, the sanctity of Yom Kippur, the joy of Sukkot. It doesn't end. Now it begins. We begin the journey into real life, into regular life, into our regular routines, but infused with the big question: what is your unique mission in this world? And are you living up to it? And when you read the story of Genesis, the story of Adam and Eve, that's exactly, you are the Adam, you are the Eve, in the Garden of Eden, born within an innocent child, growing into a world that's not as innocent. Are you able to access that innocent, pure place and discover what that is within yourself? So how does one come to that? It's one thing if we were taught that from the youngest of age and we're living up and we lived our lives accordingly. Many of us may be hearing this idea for the first time. So what do? You're in the middle of a rat race, you're on the merry-go-round, you're flying at 90 miles an hour, middle of rush hours, I mean figuratively and metaphorically. What do? The first thing is you have to ask yourself the question. You must ask the question. The question has to be asked, Ayeko, where are you? If you're not ready to ask the question, you will definitely remain a victim of your circumstances. You will continue to do what you did till now. Maybe a shift here, shift there. You must ask yourself the question, Ayeko, where are you? Where do you stand? Do you recognize your soul? Does your soul recognize you? Then the next question is, I am the only person on earth. What am I doing with that knowledge? What sense of urgency does that create? So it always begins with asking the question, Shailas Chacham Chetzi Tshuva. The question of a wise person is half an answer. The awareness of a problem is half its cure. You begin with asking the question. The next step is acting on it. You can't just ask the question. You have to say, okay, what will I do? Now, the approach is not cold turkey. Drop everything you're doing and start anew. The approach is step by step. Shabbos Bereshis is an expression, the way we establish ourselves on Shabbos Bereshis, this Shabbos, Bereshis, which means Genesis, but also Bereshis means Rosh. It also has the word Rosh, Bara, Shis, and also Reish. There's a Reish in there, the Reish Aleph Shin, like Rosh Hashanah. It's the head, it's the beginning. But here it's like an interface between the high holiday season of Tishrei into the next month of Cheshvan, which will be next week. And it is the question that we ask ourselves, that how you establish yourself on this day, so it goes. So it's essentially the same theme of Tishrei, which is also the letters Reish, Rosh Hashanah, Reishis, Tishrei, Bereshis, all from the same root. And what is that root? The root is the head, the central nervous system. So how we establish ourselves, that's how it goes. So now is the time to make resolutions, practical ones, and begin. So first step is asking the question, being aware. And the next step is acting on it. So how do you act on it? You don't continue doing what you've done till now. Every morning you wake up, you say, Moda Ani, I acknowledge to you, God, for returning my soul to me. I have a soul. It was given to me as a gift. It's what makes me unique. Your soul is not someone else's soul. Your calling is not someone else's calling. So you establish every morning, beginning the day with establishing your mission statement. And then you begin to find small steps. Prayer in the morning, study something, give some charity, do acts that introduce a higher consciousness, higher awareness into your life. More than just your survival, more than just your job, more than just your immediate needs and your family's needs. These are the small steps we do. And we do them throughout the day as much as possible. Excuse me. And before we go to sleep, Yodchav Kidruchi, in your trusting arms, I entrust. In your arms, in your hands, I entrust my spirit. The true God, may you redeem me. So we both begin the day and end the day, and punctuate it with the three prayers of the day, the charity we do, the study. Everyone should have some period of study. These are oasai. These are moments in time and space that we create that become like little islands of transcendence, little islands that remind us of that higher calling. Because remember, the oceans of this world are fierce. The storms are fierce. Mayim Rabim are intense. Mayim Rabim are the intense waters of the flood that we'll read about next week, also appropriately, because that will be the challenge to your Bereshis. The Bereshis of being Adam and Eve focused on your mission will be challenged by the flood waters, which reflect the Daigas HaParnasa, which reflect the concerns, the financial concerns, the livelihood concerns, the concerns of survival that distract us. And then, of course, that includes, in the broad sense of the word, all the concerns and anxieties that don't let us focus on our calling, which will be the next week's chapter. So we preempt that by beginning and setting the tone, that we establish ourselves and find small steps, each step of the way, of how to focus on your individual strength. And as I always say, it's always important to have someone to speak to about this. When you ask that question, Ayeko, where am I? Where are you? Or you ask yourself, Ayeko, where am I? You should discuss it with someone you trust. Because some people can, sometimes an outsider, an objective person who knows you well, can sometimes help you focus on finding what exactly makes you that unique. So we have here the entire story of our lives in the book of Genesis, with all its elaboration about the creation of the different 6 days of creation. It all comes down to one step, you, and your next step. That's what it all comes down to. Because where heaven and earth meet is at your doorstep, at your choices. And that's what we are taught in the chapter. So number one is the empowerment. The empowerment that each of us is, the entire world was created for you, for this moment, for this time, for this space where you are right now. And then acting on it by implementing in our lives for behaviors, routines, actions that are consistent with that calling. Okay, but this is on a very basic level. To go a little further and a little deeper, of course, is the biggest challenge that we always have is routines. We're back to routines. The old patterns, the old behaviors, the old routines stand as a formidable challenge to any shift, to any change, to any new move. And that's where we really are faced with the greatest dilemma. That all this may be fine and good, I'm ready to commit. So number one, remember this. Even if you have all those forces at work, that doesn't negate the opportunity that we have now to commit to something right now practically that can and will affect your life. There's no reason we should not be able to do that. So that's number one. And even though you may not see change immediately, but as soon as you introduce new habits and new routines, without necessarily even changing the old routines that you're doing, as soon as you do that, you're already in a place where you're able to begin to make moves. Because it's anything. We only have that much space in our minds and our hearts and our souls. If you focus completely on the past and continue doing all that, obviously all that will become a force of keeping you back and keeping you back to be enslaved in your past. But if you're able to take upon yourself new things, even though right now you still have the past, you're slowly filling up part of your life with new activity and new energy, and as a result, there's going to be less room for the energy to be invested in past things. So that's one basic, simple thing. Don't be deceived psychologically by saying, oh, you're busy, your life is already completely preoccupied and completely overtaken by past experiences. Fine. Past is the past. Start doing some new steps, new moves, and as a result, you'll see that will give you more power as you go to weaken the hold of past experiences. That's number one. Number two, the mere fact that you start a shift in any given way, like the Alter Rebbe in Tanya in chapter 15 makes it clear, the mere fact that you begin something, some shift, creates a qualitative adjustment that will give you an ability to make changes. So besides the new things that you're doing, just like, let's say a person has a bunch of old friends or many years you're friends, but these friends have not helped you much. They're just part of your stale and stagnating routines. So don't get rid of your friends. Get some new friends. And the new friends bring fresh air. When there's fresh air, automatically it starts freshening the stale air as well. Or at least eliminating it. The same thing is with any shift in life. When you start making a shift, shifts breed shifts. It's like any shake-up. You shake two things up, right away it becomes easier to shake the rest up. When it all remains cemented together, it becomes very difficult to do so. So we should not be deceived by the fact that we don't yet show progress, or that we have a past that still haunts us. Start something new and stick to it. That's in your choice. Stick to it. And you'll see slowly the new future will slowly replace the old past. That's how it works. So instead of fighting with the past and say, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, stop with the negating, not going to do. That's very difficult to fight a existing pattern or a routine. Do something new. So that with that alone, you already begin a new path, and that slowly weakens the hold of the past. Number two, we have to remember, is that at the end of the day, as I said it before, even though Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, even though they lost their way to some extent, we still retain, we don't believe in original sin, we still retain that pure, intense power that existed in the Garden of Eden, that the individual was created with individuality and uniqueness, with the power to change the world. Despite the fact that we may have been hijacked and kidnapped and being held hostage by the forces of survival, by the Mayim Rabim, by the raging floodwaters that overwhelm our life, we still essentially are that child that's focused singularly on its mission. However, it's become covered up, which only makes it even more powerful that when you begin to change your behavior, you are accessing not just new energies, you're really just uncovering something that was there before, so it became concealed. Which again is one of the great forces of our so-called the enemy within us. The voice within us likes to convince us that you don't have the power to do so. That's not once, I remember it was a Star Trek show or some other science fiction, where the enemy created an illusion that you were not winning, when in truth you were. So what happens is you start giving up because you feel your efforts are futile. They're futile, they're not going anywhere. Never be deceived. The Baal Shem Tov has the classic analogy of the Schwindeltreppe, the swindling staircase, the swindling steps. Schwindeltreppe is a Yiddish way of the Yiddish translation of a spiral staircase. What's a spiral staircase? It's amazing. A spiral staircase is a staircase you go up and you see the destination where you're reaching. You see it right above you, or far above you, but you're there. A spiral staircase is a situation where you don't see the destination. All you see is a spiraling staircase, to the point that you come to a state where you have to turn your whole back. You have to turn 360 degrees to be able to see before you reach the top of the staircase. So right before you're reaching the top, you can be convince yourself into thinking that you've not reached there. That's the psychological warfare, where an enemy knows that it's losing. What it does is it makes you think it's not. And remember, every step you take, number one, shifts the status quo, and number two, accesses the inner core self that you truly are, even though you might not be aware of it. So when God said Ayeka to Adam and Eve, it wasn't just a reprimand, it wasn't just a challenge. It was in a way of eliciting. It's like someone saying, I don't recognize you. I know you much better. I know that you're not who you appear to be. I know that you have the power. So Ayeka, many people say, okay, God is identifying and showing how you've wandered away from your calling. And truth is, it's much deeper than that. It's actually eliciting. It's like telling someone, I don't recognize you. I know you much better. I know that you're a far better person than what you're projecting. And that is what the message is, that even though we may be consumed with all the different distractions in our life, the Ayeka still rings true thousands of years later, and now being called to each one of us this week. Bereshit says we start the new year of 5766. What are we experiencing? We're experiencing the idea that you can access that unique voice, that unique soul, that unique spirit that makes you who you are. So, as we come from the high holiday season and we enter the Shabbos Bereshit, we have to ask yourself, you are Adam or Eve. What responsibility do you carry? Firstly, for your life and for the world around us. This brings me back to Israel. Our actions matter. Today's physics, and maybe this is why physics revealed it in order to give us a personal lesson in life, teaches us the power of the butterfly effect. A butterfly flaps its wings in Kansas City and it can create a typhoon in Singapore. Above you, meaning that for you'll be in fear and awe of that which is higher than you. He interprets Dama Lamaila Mimach. That which is above comes from you. Our action affects the cosmos, affects the entire cosmic order, affects all of existence. Why? Because we are each a singular Adam and Eve, placed in the Garden of Eden, placed in a world where our action affects everything. Yes, when we behave in a more unified fashion, more loving fashion, here, it helps create peace in Israel. It's as simple as that. You'll say, what's the connection? Peace in Israel is through fighting the enemies, enlisting in the army. That's the physical way, but there's a whole spiritual impact. Peace in the world is, at the end of the day, peace between two people, and peace between you and yourself. And qualitatively, on the microcosm, has an impact on the macrocosm. So it's a type of butterfly effect, microcosm, macrocosm effect, and that the small world, which is the human being, the small universe, impacts the larger universe, because each of us was created in the image of the entire universe, the image of God, of course. But Elam Katan Zeh Adam, the universe was created in a certain structure, and each human being is a mini universe, and the universe is a large organism. So when we elevate and refine a certain aspect of our own personal lives, it affects that corresponding aspect in the entire universe. So yes, our behavior impacts our destiny, our personal destiny. So despite of what the world looks like, and despite how many influences and shape that force us or try to force us to conform, you control your destiny. That's the lesson, personal lesson. And the global lesson, the collective, the universal lesson is you control the destiny of the world as well. As Maimonides says, a person should always envision as if the entire world is equal. The good deeds and the negative are balance each other out, cancel each other out on an equal scale. And then one act that you do tips the scale. So it doesn't matter how many millions, because all the millions are all equalized. They all stand equal and they cancel each other out. Your one act is what tips the scale. Now, how can he say that? How can he say such a thing? Because it goes back to the Adam and Eve principle. It makes no difference what everyone else does to you. Of course, it makes a difference to them and also to the world. Their behavior can impact you as well, just like your behavior can impact them. But your attitude has to be, I have to look at my responsibility right now. You don't say someone else is going to fix something, and not I won't do it. So my mother is saying the way you look at the universe has to be from the perspective that everything else is equal. And your actions tip the scale, both for yourself, for your family, and for the entire universe. This is the message we take away as we go from the holiday season into the post-holiday season. So you see from this, the calendar, the Jewish Hebrew calendar, is a fascinating study of human nature. We've discussed many times, and my book 60 Days is built on this, the idea that first there was the giving of the Torah, first there's love, and then there was betrayal, and then reconciliation. But what happens after reconciliation? What happens after the 60 days? The answer is now we have to maintain it. And maintaining is not as easy as we think. Because what stops it from becoming again another betrayal? Maintaining it is building now a life. Building a life driven by the higher calling. And that's where we can't make the mistake and say, oh, I've reconciled, we've forgiven each other, everything is good and fine. Life still goes on, there's still challenges. You now have to connect to your calling. And your calling is the driving force that defines who you are in your entire reality. So the calendar continues. I will announce here also, I made a resolution this year, that one of my many resolutions to, by popular demand, to continue the series of 60 days into the other months of the year. So Cheshvan and Kislev, then Tevis and Shvat, Adar and Nisan, Siv and Iyar, and the Tammuz and then of course Elul Tishrei is covered by 60 days. So look forward to that. We'll be working on that among many other exciting projects. So the bottom line is, the key is to keep going throughout every day of the year. The head can't be disconnected from the body. The central nervous system can be very much intact, but it has to have an impact on the rest of the system. And that's what we have to now work on, this Bereshis. If you were Adam and Eve, ask yourself that question. You're the only person on earth. You're the only person people can turn to. You have to say to yourself, I have to act, not look at others, not look at others who are looking at others, not see what others are doing. Pioneer your path. Find people who believe in you, who believe that you have that uniqueness, who encourage you, who themselves behave that way. There's no bigger inspiration than someone who themselves is living a pioneering life. And pioneering doesn't have to have fireworks. It means in your specific area of your life, in your strengths, in your POPP, your people opportunity, personality opportunities, people and places, people you know and the places you've been to. Those areas, that's where you pioneer. Those are the sparks that you've been given and allocated to refine and to elevate. So as we enter into the new year, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'sa'aretz, beginning God created heaven and earth. The most importantly, He created you with a particular purpose, a particular mission. Your soul is waiting for you to acknowledge it and access it and turn it into a driving force, the captain of your ship. And you have the complete capacity to do so. Each of us are Adam and Eve's in this world. It's also a very refreshing way to look at yourself. I spent some time over the holidays with my grandchildren. I mention them often because I study them, not as specimens, God forbid, but as human beings, and I see there's a certain you can call it egotistic and completely consumed with themselves, or it's a singularity of focus, of being there completely. They don't have other distractions. It's a tremendous lesson to be able to be focused. And now if you take that focus with the maturity of an adult and harness it and direct it towards our calling, you have yourself that singular power, the laser energy of a focused life, of a purposeful life, of a meaningful life, of a life driven by our calling instead of our tool chest. Imagine the hammer telling your hand where to go. Your hand should be telling the hammer where to go. Your soul should be telling your body where to go, not the other way around. The captain of the ship should be leading the ship. The ship shouldn't be telling the captain where it should be headed. So we have that opportunity as we come to this chapter to renew ourselves, Bereshis, to renew ourselves through the birthday of that we all experience, the collective birthday of Rosh Hashanah, but now we actually read about it in the Torah now. In the first of the 52 chapters of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 books of the Torah, of the Bible, and we read what about the individual creation of you and I. That's how you have to see it. Don't read about Adam and Eve. You, God created me. I am now alone on this earth with full responsibility of everything that is in my proximity. And what will I do with it? That's the question we have to ask. What will you do with the earth that was entrusted to you? This is Simon Jacobson speaking to you online this week. I will be giving the class next week, hopefully live in New York, and of course it will be broadcast as well. Meanwhile, it's online. The magic of broadcasting, of internet, of technology. Everyone should have a very, very blessed year. A year where we focus on our individual responsibility. Each of us, what can I do to change the world that was given to me? And this is a question you have to ask yourself every day. What can I do today? What have I done at the end of the day? Ask yourself. Ayeka. What have I done today? Small shift. Answer that question. One act every day, you'll see a changed life inside of yourself, a changed psyche. And change breeds change, a change that spills over to everyone else. Again, this has been Simon Jacobson. Please stay in touch. If we don't have your email address, send us the email address and we'll send you our weekly newsletter. And we look forward to a robust and completely new array of programming. Look forward to a whole bunch of announcements that we'll be making as we go along this year in developing programs that are all meant for one purpose and one purpose only, to help empower the Adam within you, the Eve within you, to truly make change and sustainable change for the good, until we collectively can all bring it together and recreate the Basit Lagani, return to the garden, the divine garden that we make from this universe in which we live. The people in Israel, the Jews in Israel, should have peace. The terrorists, the criminals should be arrested, should be preempted, and God is with us and therefore protects, especially protects the Jews in Israel, a land that God watches over. God watches over that land, and that it should have only blessings, and those blessings should spill over to all of us, and we should all do our part in building the Israel within us, the Garden of Eden within us, and building it through our actions and impacting, and asking yourself every day, what have I done today to make a small change in my life, in my family's life, in my community, people I've met? Ask the question, demand it of yourself, dare yourself to do something different, and you'll see difference in your life. May it be a blessed year. So until next week, Wednesday at 8:15, everyone have a very blessed, renewed week of Bereshis, a week of full responsibility, the Adam and Eve, that each of us is in the Garden of Eden. Be well, my friends.